We had so many VHS tapes from my grandfather. He rented everything from Blockbuster and made a copy of it. And he loved making not just a copy, but a really organized copy, like its own black box with the number and orange sticker on it labeled. And he was up to like 800 of these things all across his walls in the basement. Definitely an FBI violation, my friend, but he was really into it. And I just followed suit in that too. And I just always liked watching movies. Movies are just a way for me to laugh and to experience a story, something beyond myself.
Tell me a little bit about you, Michael Govier. Tell me, were you always a movie fan growing up?
Oh, family was total trash. My parents got divorced when I was 5. We didn't have much of a family, but the good news is you got movies. Movies could be your family and they could be your parents. I'm 42 now. I was born in 1980. So to give you a timeline, I remember seeing E.T. in the theater, I guess.
Really?
Maybe it
1981?
Yeah. Well, I think it was 82. It actually came out in the theater, I believe. But I would have been 2. So they had to have been doing like a re-showing in like a dollar theater a couple years later. But I did see it in the theater. I did. I must have been really young. But I remember the Reese's Pieces scene in particular. I was like, oh, yeah, that was cool. I used to love Reese's Pieces as a kid because of that movie.
Good candy.
But great candy. I mean, it's such a delicious, it's got crisp bite to it, but it's tasty, and you can just pop them in your mouth and just load your gut with Reese's Pieces until you can't feel any feelings anymore. And that's what I've done in my life. But before I ever did that, when I became a movie fan, I guess was just the experience of going to a theater. It still took a hold in me. I remember seeing Transformers, the movie in 86. Like movies like that, where I went to the movie theater, I was like, oh, wow, cool. Ghostbusters. I was young, but I got to see some. I mean, I saw RoboCop, which 1987 classic by Paul Verhoeven when I was like 9. I remember we'd watch it. We had so many VHS tapes from my grandfather, by the way, who basically he rented everything from Blockbuster and made a copy of it. And he loved making not just a copy, but a really organized copy that had its own box, like its own black box with the number and orange sticker on it labeled. And he was up to like 800 of these things all across his walls in the basement. The guy was totally ripping off. Definitely an FBI violation, my friend. But he was really into it. And I just followed suit in that too. And I just always liked watching movies. Not sure what it is than anybody else where it would be unique. Like, wow, movies did this for me. But like movies are just a way for me to laugh and to experience a story, something beyond myself. And I just kept enjoying that experience the older I got. And it always became more enjoyable. It never became less enjoyable for me.
So what was your favorite movie of watching from childhood?
Man, I love The Never-Ending Story. That was a classic for me. I must have seen that movie so many times. Yes, I cried like everybody else when Artex, spoiler alert, something happens to Artex. That movie was a big part of my childhood. Watch that movie all the time. A movie called Santa Claus, the movie from 1985. And it starred John Lithgow and Dudley Moore as like this bumbling elf who gets kicked out of Santa's kingdom in the North Pole. And starts working for John Lithgow, who's like this scumbag corporate CEO who exploits the naive Dudley Moore. I watched that movie a lot growing up. Santa Claus the movie. That's a harder one to find these days, but it's out there somewhere.
It sounds like it's Elf, but 18 years earlier.
Yeah, I guess so. I've never sat down and watched Elf.
Great
I know of
flick.
it.
John Favreau directed, honestly, the best Will Ferrell film. Even better than Anchorman. Anchorman's funnier. But the heart that's in Elf, there's a reason why it's become an instant holiday Christmas classic. It is that good. It's Zooey Deschanel, Faison Lev has a small role in it. Ed Asner, of all people. Of course, Sonny Corleone himself plays his real life father. Like, I don't really give away spoilers, but it's in the trailer. So
yeah,
if you have James Caan in a Christmas movie, that is everything that your mind thinks it is when I say James Caan in a Christmas movie. That is him in Elf. It's great.
I need to see Elf, so I'll put it on my list. Maybe I'll bring it up for Cinema 9, because lately I've been picking movies that I've never seen before to kind of see if they hold up, because I've never seen them. So I just dive in. But, outside of my childhood years, more into my teenage years, films that I loved, Boogie Nights, all-time classic for me. I'd watched that movie so many times. We had VHS copies when I was a senior in high school, 97, 98. Boogie Nights, Legends of the Fall. These were movies I watched on repeat over and over again, and including RoboCop, which is still one of my favorite all-time flicks.
I saw your recent podcast, Cinema Nine podcast on Natural Born Killers. And so when I was in college, I got to see an early screening, like an extended cut that's longer than the director's cut. The current opening scene of Boogie Nights was 45 minutes into the movie. And when you guys were talking about the sitcom scene in Natural Born Killers, where it's Rodney Dangerfield and it's Dutch angles and like really weird lighting and it's like really disturbing on a lot of levels. Yeah. There was an almost identical scene in the beginning of Boogie Nights before Mark Wahlberg turns into Dirk Diggler. He's Eddie Adams. And they were showing how emotionally abusive Eddie's mother is. And she's like, yeah. And it was played by actress Joni Gleason, who did a lot of 90s sitcoms. She did a CBS sitcom that was sort of like Becker before Becker. And all these things, so you see all this hellscape of his home life. And then
you're a loser. You'll always be a loser. And then what are you going to do? I'll do something.
And then 45 minutes into the film, he goes out to a club and he meets Roller Girl. And she does the, wow. so yeah, a great film. Love Wes Anderson and Paul Thomas Anderson. I love all the Andersons. All of the Andersons directors, great filmmakers.
Yeah, Harry Anderson of Night Court, Richard Dean Anderson of MacGyver. Love all the Andersons. Yeah.
How can you not? We've all MacGyvered a VHS player at some point in our lives. So how do you not love all? That should be a movie in and of itself. Like all the Andersons. Copyright Dragon Movie Guy podcast. So, what is the next upcoming video for Cinema 9 podcast? What are you guys doing next?
Yeah, well, we ended up delaying this week. We were supposed to do my choice, my turn to pick, and I chose a movie I never saw. Like I said, I'm on a run. The Crying Game, 1992's The Crying Game, which spoiled for me as a youngster, because when it came out, I was 12, but I heard all about it because America could just not help themselves. They're obsessed. They're obsessed with, the shocking, if you will, to them, to their sensitive ears or their sensitive eyes and minds. And all they talked about how there was a certain body part that I'll just leave it there so we don't spoil it, because we still have to talk about the movie. We're going to do that show next week. So whenever you see this, we will have not done The Crying Game yet, because we'll do it next Thursday. We record every Thursday. We used to live stream. Now we don't live stream anymore. We just upload our video versions. But of course, we have all our podcast versions available. Cinema 9 podcast. Good stuff. But The Crying Game, Neil Jordan, 1992, is our next movie on the docket. And I'm excited to talk about it because I'd never seen it. And I had no idea that Forrest Whitaker was in it at all.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite parts of that film. That's an easy bar to reach when you're saying is the favorite part of The Crying Game as Forrest Whitaker.
Exactly.
I remember watching that in theaters and like, okay, I heard all the I didn't hear what it was because even back then spoilers was a big thing. So like, okay, why am I going to see it? All right, and like halfway, whatever it is, a third of the way through, like, oh, well, there's that.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
And we still got another 40 minutes to go in the movie. That's what surprised me by watching it for the first time. I thought it'd be like the final ending. It's not like that at all. It's much different than at least I was purported, which was refreshing because I thought I knew so much about the movie coming in that I'd never seen before. It's a really interesting film about the IRA and England and terrorism and people taking sides and how human beings get caught up in that who have nothing to do with it. I'll have a lot to say about it on next week's episode of Cinema 9, The Crying Game.
It's one of those movies, too, that people that haven't seen the movie have jokes about having watched the movie. So in a very similar way to Brokeback Mountain, everyone has jokes about Brokeback Mountain. I wish I could quit you. But very few people have actually watched it. And when I actually went back and watched it for the first time like 2-3 years ago, got it on Blu-ray, I was like, wow, this is, it is a gay cowboy movie, but it's more cowboys who are gay than gay cowboys. Like there's no line dancing and stuff. So it's actually
a powerful film.
Yeah, it's really amazing storytelling, great character work, amazing cinematography, And yeah, the stuff from the trailers in there. I wish I could quit you, but it's such a great emotional journey as a film. It's funny how these movies sometimes get into the zeitgeist and just sort of
Exactly. They get Americanized.
We haven't seen the film, but we react to the film, and that sort of spreads like wildfire. Like, oh yeah, it's I wish I could quit you.
Exactly.
Like, have you seen that movie? Yeah, it's an SNL bit
where everyone just has something to say immediately before they ever see it. It's kind of like our current culture today, where people just speak out of turn without having any clue what they're talking about.
Yep. Exactly. Because you can't just say I haven't seen it. You gotta have some sort of reaction on everything. I mean, hell, there's reaction YouTube channels, for God's sake. So, so that is a little bit of getting to know Michael Govier. Everybody clap. I still need to get sound effects, but thank you for letting me
one thing at a time
get to know you.